Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 70 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choit. What's up? If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, often comedians and other artists, about their lives and careers. It's casual conversation, but I also ask everyone to highlight someone they love, someone who they admire, who influenced them, inspired them, supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com, and the Instagram handle is @peoplewelovepodcast. And you can find me on Instagram as well, @AdamChoit, if you want to follow me too. And remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And of course, 5-star positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated as well. So, today's guest is comedian Lexie Grace. Born and raised right here in LA, this always smiling woman tells me all about being a hard-working go-getter. Pretty much always. She must get it from her mom, Lydia Nicole, who is also a stand-up comedian. And Lexie's dealt with a lot in her life. Mean classmates, stupid guidance counselors, and absurd bosses. But mom has always been there for her. We talk NYU, we talk stand-up, we talk London, and of course mom. Let's just get this inspiring, epic interview started. Here's Lexie Grace. So it's good to see you today, Lexie Grace.
Good to see you.
Oh, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so happy to be on.
How's your day going? How's your life going? How's the quarantine life treating you?
It's going pretty good considering like everything. I feel like I'm really lucky that I've been able to keep up like doing some work, and I've been able to use this time to kind of work on creative projects. So I just feel really lucky. Like I feel like it's a good time to kind of like readjust and make some changes. And I'm also very it sucks being inside, but it's been a good excuse to reconnect with people that I've lost touch with.
Have you got down at all? Any moment where you're like just down at all?
I did get a little punchy when I was like like at one point, like for not leaving my house. I think one time me and my mom were, cause I'm quarantining with my mom right now. At one point we were fighting over who was going to throw out the trash, because we wanted to leave the house.
Because neither of you wanted to leave, or both? Oh, both wanted to leave.
Both wanted to. So we were like, we could both throw it out the trash.
That's a new one. Arguing over who gets to take out the trash.
Yeah, we're like, I'll do it. But no, it's been great. Like I really have no complaints. Like my mom's an amazing cook, and yeah, it's just been great to kind of sit down. And again, like I've been able to write a bunch of scripts that I didn't think I was going to have time for, and collab on stuff. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, everyone's going in one direction or the other. It feels like either you're getting more focused and taking care of things that you haven't had a chance to, or you're depressed and laying on the couch with a bag of potato chips in your lap, watching Netflix all day.
No, I you know what? I could fall
balance
into
between
that.
those two.
Yeah, I could. I mean, not in the depression thing, but I could fall into just like wanting to watch stuff. What really helps is I have a few accountability partners that I work with daily. So we do like co-working. So like I have like office hours from like 9 to 12 and with like someone else, and we kind of do a Zoom thing, and then we're working on Zoom, so we see each other working.
Wow.
And then
that's cool.
Then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have like night work with another friend actually Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays we do it.
That's cool. How long have you been doing the accountability? Just during this
yeah,
quarantine?
Starting in literally the second day of quarantine it happened.
This was your idea?
Yeah, it probably was.
It just seems like it might be.
Probably was, yeah.
Well, why don't we get into it? You could tell me about your life and being born and the ride home from the hospital, and we can get started.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
What do you remember from that?
I really honestly don't remember being a baby. One of my friends, though, my best friend, she always remembers, like, as a child, her wanting the cookies and her parents not giving her the cookies as, like, a 1-year-old. And I'm like, whoa. That's
my primary. Those are some of my primary memories. Also. Not from 1 year old, but from ages probably 4 through 17, wanting to eat cookies.
I mean, I have a lot of memories of me just eating the cookies.
Those are your earliest memories from like 2, 3, 4 years old? Do you have anything pop out from even that young?
preschool?
Probably one of the earliest memories is like, yeah, I think I was like 3 or 4, and I used to have this really big black Jamaican nanny named Lorraine, and she would walk me to my preschool, and we just walk together, and I just remember like walking on the street with her.
That's cool.
Yeah. I also remember it's hard because I don't remember I don't remember time like age wise. I also remember my mom taking me to church, and I had gotten out of church, and she had asked me what we watched, and we watched Wallace and Gromit, and I had said something along the lines of like, the dog was so smart, he was British.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, where did you get this from? Like, what? That logic is so weird.
That British people are smart?
Well, no, just that he was so smart that he was British, that like after a certain point of like intelligence, you just become British.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. I could see that. That makes sense.
He's so smart, he's British.
What about when you were a little bit older, from like kindergarten, early elementary school? Anything jump out at you from then? What kind of kid were you?
I was a really actually, this would be surprising. So I would say about like probably to like 8 and above and below, 8 and under, I was really fearless, and I would like run around. And then after 8, I turned into like a shy kid. From like 8 to like 13, I was like really shy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just didn't want to talk to anybody. I would like talk to myself, and like I would talk to other people, but I was just like mostly like very quiet. And I would still smile. Like that's consistent throughout the whole thing, as I would smile the whole time.
Yeah.
And
why
then,
shy? Why so shy?
I think I was scared of people. Like I had some like bad experiences of bullies when I like transferred from like 8 to 9.
Yeah.
And it just really like made me feel like, okay, I'm kind of gonna limit what I do. And then what happened was, when I was about 12, my mom took us to New York to live for a couple months. And I had always had this fantasy because I had seen DJ Quayle's The New Kid. I don't know if you remember that movie. It's about like this kid who like has like a weird incident at his school, and like then he goes to another school where Eliza Dushkush is like a popular kid there. And I think Eddie Griffin's like the guy that's like, so this is what he's in jail, and he's like, this is what you got to do so you can like be the popular kid. And he like teaches him, like, he's like, set something on fire and do all this stuff. And so I was like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to go to new school. I didn't think I was going to light anything on fire, but I was like, I'll be the cool kid. And then I went to New York, and I still got like really badly bullied. And then I just stopped giving a care. I was like, whatever, people are jerks everywhere. And then that's when I made like I made a shift in my personality, like 13, just to be like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And then
I was going to ask, how old were you when you moved to New York or lived in New York for a short while?
I think I was either 12 or 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the summer that I came back, I had like a big personality shift that I really didn't care. I started talking to everyone.
Interesting.
Because I realized it didn't matter how big or how small I made myself, people were still going to attack, right? So it was just like, I might as well just live the life I want to live, and then people can react how they want to.
That's a pretty deep, profound insight to have at such a young age. I don't think I had any deep, profound insights about myself until I was 30.
No, I think it just was like, it literally was so devastating, because that was also when I realized that like, oh, that scene in the movies like didn't work. Like I'm here and they're still treating me like, so that's when I made the flip. And then high school was, it was great.
People bully you just because you're nice and they take advantage. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's also because I got a constant smile, so I get teased a lot for it. And it was like I was too nice, so then people would take advantage, and I wouldn't fight back because I was, as a kid, I grew really tall. So I'm like pretty much the same height that I was as a child. I was like a big, like I was like, I don't know. I would think I was like, yeah, I grew really tall. So then people would like tease me.
Yeah.
And then I just stopped growing when I went to high school and everyone else grew. So then I was just like, whatever.
What's so bad about smiling? It almost seems to have like a negative connotation. Like you don't really see people walking around smiling. Maybe that's an LA thing. People don't smile at each other. No one even looks at each other. You ask someone to smile, they accuse of sexism. Like what is going on? Like why can't anyone smile?
I don't know, but it's like it's I think it's because people feel like you can't be that happy. Like you can't, you shouldn't be like, you shouldn't try to look for joy in life all the time.
Right.
I remember I've had a few situations of people yelling at me when I was working, or people thinking that, usually too, when I smile, people think that I'm an idiot. Like I have a lot of people that think I'm an idiot. And sometimes they think I can't speak English. Like I've had people come up to me being like, are you from this country? And I'm like, yes, I am.
What the hell? It's such a cultural thing because people don't smile, especially I guess maybe in the United States or at least in LA. I don't know.
No, when I lived in London, I actually I was working at the BBC, and during my exit interview, I wasn't working. Let me clarify. I was on attachment, which is basically like an internship at the BBC. And during my exit interview, my boss basically told me, was like, you should, a little bit of advice, like you did a great job working here, but she was like, Alexia, you really need to stop smiling because it just makes people think you don't know what you got, like what's going on. She was like, I think at your next job, just like fake like you're stressed, like fake like you're angry.
So weird.
Because she was like, you're hitting all the deadlines, but we just think you don't know when the deadlines are.
We just want you to not be yourself and not look like yourself. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can you handle that?
So it just was really, it was really funny. And then that got me angry. So then I was like, I understand people who are like, I don't want to smile. I just want to, I was like, you can feel however you want to feel. Like
that must be one of the like scariest things to like, either be like dating you or be a friend of yours or your family member, and you get upset at that person and you're not smiling because you seem to so rarely, I don't know you super well, but you seem to always be smiling and always be positive and upbeat for the most part. So when you're actually mad, that must be like some really strange, scary shit.
It is. People get scared. People get scared.
Because it's like you're not you.
I remember.
And they must know something's wrong.
One time, an old roommate of mine tried to pull a bad prank on me. A bad prank. It went very wrong. So basically, she thought it would be funny because we lived on like this busy street. She thought it would be funny to act like she was snatching my purse and run, right? So she comes behind me, and little does she know that like I've been training for this moment. Right? Like I've been training for the day that someone tries to test me. So she comes running. She tries to take my purse, and I just freeze, and I like look at her, and I'm not smiling. I'm angry. And she realized that there's no recognition in my eyes, right? Like I have not recognized who this person is. Like I literally at that moment had like face blindness, and I was about to like do something, and she's like, "It's me."
Oh man, yeah.
So yeah.
You picked that up in New York, either when you were young or either later in college. The how to defend myself and my purse.
I think it's because my mom's a New Yorker, so like I'm always like her lead is always like be vigilant, like right, like you be nice but be vigilant.
Yeah, why don't we go back and rewind a little bit, and you could tell me more about like growing up and your mom, and more about like what kind of kid you were. Did you get good grades when you were in school?
Okay, so I did, like I would say up until 7th grade, I didn't get good grades. Because what happened was in 6th grade, I wanted a bowling t-shirt, and I was a horrible student and no one liked me. And I wanted this bowling t-shirt because if you ran on ASB, if you won a position on ASB, you could get a bowling t-shirt.
What's ASB?
Student council.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, I'm going to run for student council. And I made all these flyers. And I kind of won in like almost like in a Carrie situation. Like everyone in my class, like were making fun of me. So they had like mean chants and stuff. So they voted me like to be ASB, but I didn't care because I was going to get the shirt. And then I ended up befriending, while I was on student council, this really popular cheerleader girl. And then she ended up like changing my life and really was like, you got to get your stuff together. You got to study. You got to do stuff.
This was in high school, you said?
No, this was in 6th grade. So she was an 8th grader, and she was like cheerleading captain. Like we shouldn't have been friends on paper. Just because I was so low. Like I was like a really like the geekiest geeks would make fun of me. Like that's how I was on like the totem pole.
Wow.
Like it was just like everyone would poop on me. It was like I was fair game. And so she was like really nice to me, and she like told people to like what like be kind. And my mom, I have to say, going back to my mom, so my mom actually, never mind. I was going to do a hard pivot, but I shouldn't do
it. No, you can. I was going to ask about your mom and what she thought about your grades and the bullying and all this stuff.
My mom didn't like the bullying. She's really not. Yeah, she's really New York. She would actually go up to kids and be like, if you don't, I'm going to beat you. Like she was like, I'm going to kick your butt. Like you stop. I'm going to tell your parent, and I'm going to come over to your house and spank you.
I don't think you can get away with that so much anymore.
Yeah, probably not anymore. But at the time, it was like she
you can't threaten other parents' kids.
Well, she was like, I'm gonna talk to your parents, and then I'm gonna And then she was always like up in the principal's office, like stirring hell, like being like, this is unacceptable. Because like my mom, she was a single mom, and she like worked really hard, like worked a bunch of jobs so that like I could go to private school. Because like my mom actually, fun fact about her is she did stand-up comedy.
Wow.
Yeah. So so at the time that I was in school, she was doing like that and a bunch of like just like she was making a good chunk of money just from stand-up, because she would do like on the road gigs. Like she had a troupe that she would travel with that was all comics of like female comics of Latin descent, and they would just travel the world, and they were called like the hot and spicy mamitas. And so she was like making like, like they would do like Telemundo and stuff like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that must have had a fairly profound impact on you, given where you are today.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was really inspiring to see, like, because there was all these different women, and kind of just to see that, like, they could be wild and they could be funny, and they didn't have to be, like, in the paint in the lines. Like, they could do whatever they wanted to. So that was really cool.
And your mom was always a comedian, and you kind of, those are kind of always memories that you had growing up. Like, what do you have, like, when did you see her perform?
I never got to see her perform because, ironically, my mom was a very dirty, raunchy comic.
That was my next question. What was her material like?
Which is funny because I'm so clean. So it's like people are like, she doesn't do stand-up anymore. She did it, like, she stopped doing it once I entered, like, I think like 8th grade. She stopped doing it, or maybe a little before 8th grade. I'm not quite sure. But she stopped doing it. But yeah, it was like her friends constantly being around. And what was funny, though, is I have to tell you, I never wanted to do stand-up as a child because she did stand-up.
You didn't want to do it because you feel like you couldn't live up to her, or you just wanted to be different than her? What was the reason that you didn't want to do it?
I just felt like, I was like, oh, this seems like really rough. Like, there's hecklers, and it just seems like a hard, like, life.
You just don't want the job. You don't want that job.
I wanted to be, at that time, I wanted to be like, I either wanted to be like a chain smoking detective or like an actor. And then, those were like the two things. And then I was like, I definitely want to I knew I wanted to do comedy or I wanted to be a detective. So it was either those two things.
Always growing up, that's always the kind of the two dreams, the two goals, either acting, comedy movies, TV or whatever. sketches or be a detective.
Yeah, just be a chain smoking detective, have a bevy of problems, not being able to, have to hunt down a killer, have like one of those offices. Like I wanted that, like, she walked. Yeah.
Did you really want this, or did you just want to act and play a detective? Is that really what the dream is?
I really, at that point as a child, I had wrapped in my head, like now looking back, I'm like, I know I don't want to be a detective. But back then I was like, yes, I want to be a detective. I want to be able to solve crimes because I liked making stuff as a kid. I liked solving problems. So I really liked the idea of like being that kind of detective and also having like all these people be like, oh man, that's that person. Like we should like be careful. Like, like I always felt like watching detective movies and like seeing like the old film noirs, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then the other thing too about being a detective is like it just seemed like really like dope. Like it just seemed like the coolest gig ever.
I got you. What other kind of things were you into, like growing up in either middle school or high school? Like what kind of movies were you watching other than what you just said? Or
I forgot to mention too.
Yeah.
I also had like this weird obsession when I was younger with like trying to get in Skull and Bones. Like I wanted to go to Yale or Harvard or wherever it was and get into that secret society. I was like, I'm going to get into that secret society.
That's funny because my dream is now to take them down.
Oh, really? That's so funny.
And expose them.
Yeah, that was like my dream as a kid, was like to get into get into Skull and Bones and then be like initiated and know the secrets.
Yeah, just kidding. Like, I don't believe in any conspiracy theories.
But now, yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm glad that didn't happen. I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't know if they let
women.
Yeah, Black Puerto Rican women into Skull and Bones.
I don't know. I feel like they probably have like one or two because they're like we need it now.
Right.
But maybe not. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
They'll use you for PR.
Exactly. Like because they need some people to be like unsuspecting, right? They need some plants to be lurking.
Okay, so Skull and Bones, detective, maybe some acting.
I was
some
also
different options presenting themselves.
Yeah, I was also really into yo-yoing at the time. I wanted to be a professional. Oh, I wanted to be a professional yo-yo, but that was like a minute. Like I wanted to be that for like maybe like 4 months.
Do you know the comedian Mallory Jean Fusella by any chance?
Yes, I do. She used to teach it, didn't she?
Yeah, no, she toured. She was in part of a yo-yo show for kids. And she would tour the country and do yo-yo shows. And she was like a professional yo-yoer. I did not say that right. Yo-yoer,
yeah.
I don't even, there's probably a word for it.
No, you said it right, yo-yoer.
She would, during the day, she would be doing these wholesome yo-yo shows. And then at night, she would, do her raunchy, whatever, comedy and have like this sort of like interesting juxtaposition of their life.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
So hit her up if you want to brush up on your yo-yo skills.
I mean, I still yo-yo from time to time. I still got the yo-yo. And then I used to be really into Diablo as a child. Not the devil, but it's like this Chinese yo-yo where it's like you got the 2 sticks and stuff like that. What else did I used to really like to watch rom-coms and anything with Brendan Fraser, Hugh Grant.
What happened to Brendan Fraser? Fraser.
Brendan Fraser, I think something someone wrote a think piece on it. I have not read it yet, but there's a reason why he like left. Like it was like a traumatic thing that happened to him, and then I think he like left for a while.
Yeah, it's I mean, I was not always, but I feel bad with a little bit when you like people like, oh, what happened to Brendan Fraser? Where did he go? What happened to his career? As if like, first of all, the guy probably had a great career and he's made more money than most of the people asking this question in the first place and been more successful. And it's like, who knows? Maybe he chose to leave. Maybe, he had some bad luck. Like everyone always assumes like it's like this dark, nefarious or like something went wrong, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think something, I don't know. I haven't read the article, so I don't know. We'll leave it at that. I don't know, because I think that I have an idea of what happened, but I don't know. I like kind of remembering the article title, but
yeah, he had a lot of, a bunch of good movies, pretty good actor.
Yeah, I loved him in Blast from the Past. Like, that was one of my favorite movies. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't. I remember seeing him in The Scout, where he played the baseball player who was the pitcher.
Oh, yeah.
Albert Brooks, I think, was in there.
Yeah, no, that was great. And he's kind of got like a kid personality.
Right, yeah.
And they're trying to like train him like down in Mexico.
Right, yeah.
No, that was great. And then I loved, A Blast from the Past is, I mean, we're kind of living in Blast from the Past. So that's how I like kind of made it feel like the first. It's basically like he, in a time of bomb shelters, him and his parents went underground when they were pregnant with him. So he was raised in a bomb shelter for 30 years of his life. And he's been told that like everyone up top is like radioactive and like evil. And so then on his 30th birthday, it opens and he can finally go out, and he has to get supplies from his family and bring it back because they're running out of supplies from being in there for 30 years. And everyone's like, he's like, gee, golly whiz. And they're like, it's like the 90s grunge. It's really funny.
I have to check that out. Cool. I was going to ask, what any other notable things from high school, or you want to talk about? Were you into like music, or when did stand-up start to become like a thing that you became interested in?
Well,
when we get there.
So high school, it was like different. High school was.
Yeah, you said you liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. So basically what happened was in 8th grade when I applied to high school, my mom realized that the school that I had done elementary at, they had really underprepared me, right? And so I couldn't get into like barely any high schools. Like I got into one high school. And it was like my third choice. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And
these are private schools in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And my mom said, this is never going to happen again. Let's figure out today, like, what you need for college, so we know that you're on the right path. Because like we trusted that your school was giving you all the right information, and then we had to play catch up when we realized that they weren't teaching you what you needed to learn.
Was that a public school or private school?
It was a private school, but the thing was that they had a feeder school, so everyone just assumed that like, oh, everyone's going to want to go into the feeder, and we didn't want to go into the feeder.
Yeah.
Like so my mom sat down and we kind of figured out what I needed to do, and we had read someplace that like for colleges, it's like they want well-rounded people, right? They want people that have made a difference and like do things and like all these things. So then I became like queen of the clubs. Like I was on student body council. I was in drama club. I was in student library advisory board. I was in
everything.
I was in mock trial. I was in like the Friends Against Drugs club. I was president of that actually, and I was president of the library. I was president of drama for a little bit. And I was like, we are like, whatever I got to do to get to college.
So not only were you in these clubs, it sounds like you were in prominent positions within the clubs and very active as well. Because I was in clubs, but I was like, show up for the bare minimum requirement just so I could put it on the resume for most of them.
Yeah, no, I was like super active. I was like, let's pinpoint these things. And ASB, I was like the youngest person in the school to be in like one of like the main student council positions, like for overall, like there was, because I got treasurer, because that was like, I started to see an inkling of like, when I look back, I go like, oh, that's why I got into stand-up. Because like what I loved about ASB was I loved giving the speeches. Like that was my favorite part. Like junior year, I didn't want to run. Like I knew I was not loving ASB anymore, but I had already written the speech and I wanted to see it delivered.
Which speech did you had you already written?
So it was for treasurer, and like typically juniors don't win treasurer, right?
This was like a campaign speech for like a while you're running, or like an acceptance speech, or
a campaign speech.
I got you.
So I had come up with this concept of Baby Got Back. So I was like, oh, it's going to start off with like, oh my God, Becky, look at that girl's wallet. She looks like one of those ASB treasurers. And I was like, Baby got bucks. And there was like some misinterpretation with how I said some certain phrases. So people thought I said me so horny, but I said me so corny.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, my homies tried to warn me that this song I'm singing is so corny. And people thought I said that, because in the original it's horny. Yeah. But I said corny. And so it just made everyone, it was just like, everyone was like, legend. And they just like voted for me. Like, I crushed it. Like, there was no coming back. And then senior year, I had run for president. And again, I just wanted to give the speech, but I got hip because I was like, oh, I don't want to win. So what could I do? So the problem was junior year, I had put up too many flyers and the song was like pretty fire. So junior year, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to any underclassmen. And I'm going to put up 2 posters because I had to put up some posters like for some bylaw or something. So I put up 2 posters, one in the girls' bathroom that was in like the main building and another in another building in the girls' bathroom. And our school was co-ed. So it really was a very bad election, but my speech still got me to, I think I lost by like 10 votes throughout the whole school.
Yeah.
So if I had actually cared, and then I also loved, because I thought in school, I thought I was going to be a film major, like a filmmaker, and which I am, but I thought I was going to like really be a filmmaker. So like instead of writing essays, I just asked teachers if I could do films. Like instead of essays, I'd be like, how about I make you a 10-minute film? And instead of a 10-page paper, and a lot of them were like, yeah, like, I don't think anybody ever turned me down.
That's awesome. I was kind of the same way. What can I do to make this project more fun?
Exactly. And then
this assignment more fun.
Exactly. And then I would do a lot of like improvisations and like acting and like school. Like I would take, like, if I could do a presentation, I would always add flair to it. Like one time I had to do pattern speech. I had to do that in English class, and not everyone had to act, you just had to read it, but I wanted to like act it. So I was like, anytime I raise my hand, you go hoorah, and like my whole class, it was cool. It was fun.
Wanted to be interactive. Yeah, because I was kind of going to ask, like, because I can already see the seeds of comedy, stand-up comedy being planted, and with your mom and liking to give speeches and liking to put your own elements into the speeches and make them funny and interactive. What that was going to ask. What did you enjoy most about public speaking? Like when you started to like, was it the reaction? Was it the laughter? Was it the thrill of being in front of people? Was it the writing? What was the best part of public speaking that you enjoyed?
For me, in public speaking, it was always the reaction, but it also was like the gravity. It was also the excitement of like seeing something that I had written and seeing people react to something like I thought of in my room. Right. Like it was also like I actually, so in my school, they didn't have like the valedictorian doesn't give the speech. They actually vote on who gives the speech. So like I was able to, like, I really wanted to be the class speaker. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take up all these opportunities to speak to people. And ironically, you know what job I didn't like doing? I had to give the morning announcements, and I did not like doing that.
Because you just had to play it straight?
I don't know if it's because I had to. I think it's because they typically gave me a lot of names which I felt like I could not pronounce, so I felt like I came off like a lunatic because I was like, like I just was like making up names, and then I would come off air and they would be like, that was not any of the names, and I was like, you guys should give this to someone else. This isn't my strong suit. Like I had to. I think one time we had something for. Like I'm giving an example because I don't remember the real artist, but let's say it was Da Vinci, right? I was like, okay, everybody, there's gonna be, we're playing a movie about Da Vicky. He's gonna be like Da Vicky is coming, and it was like Da Vinci, but like my art teacher would always yell at me after I finished because she would be like, your pronunciation was so off. But she was like, but you were so confident that I started questioning myself. That wasn't the pronunciation.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you ever get nervous doing these announcements or any sort of public speaking or during any of these speeches at all?
In high school, I really didn't because I didn't get because I think I felt like I never really got a chance to perform. Like, even though I was in drama club and I had an active role in drama club, I really didn't get many parts in drama club. So like, this was like my time to shine.
Gotcha. You were ready.
I was ready. I was like, let's do this. Like, then I think it also was like, I went to a very small school. So everyone knew each other. It was like the equivalent of like a Hallmark small town. Like, there was only in my graduating class, I think there was like 150 kids.
That's like what I had.
Yeah.
Not that small. Small. It's all relative. Like, some people I talk to, I graduated, there's 20 people in my high school class. And
That's
other people,
true.
there's like thousands. So it's like, there's a wide range for sure. If you went to a giant school, you're like, oh, that's tiny. But if you went to a 12-person school up in upstate New York, you'd be like, oh, that's a big school. So
yeah, no, that's
all
true.
relative.
That's true. That is true. That's a good point, Adam. It is all relative.
What were your plans like junior, senior year, thinking about college? I know you said you were interested in film and that you and your mom were pretty focused on getting you to the next step.
Yeah, I even took like UCLA classes, and I went to like Pasadena Art School. Like, I just was like getting extracurriculars wherever I could. And we took I think I took a few prep classes and stuff like that. Like, I was always taking a bunch of outside courses. And what ended up happening was in high school, in junior year, my now best friend was like, hey, I'm going to this thing at this seminar at NYU, and I didn't know where I was going to go. And my mom was like, you need to really think about it. And what I love about my mom is always a big fan of, like, when I was growing up, like as a child, she would let me try like anything. Like, she would always be like, let's try Taekwondo one time. Let's try blah, blah, blah. But she would never let me quit, right? She would be like, let's just see it to like the end of the 8 weeks. And then if you don't like it, you don't go. So she was always like, let's check it out. So I had heard from my best friend at the time, Kaylee, that NYU was doing a thing. So I told my mom, and my mom was like, well, let's check out NYU. We don't know where you want to go, but it might be cool just to hear about colleges, right? So we go there.
So you went all the way across the country to New York. This wasn't like a thing in LA.
No, it was a thing in LA. Sorry. It was a thing in LA. It was a thing in LA. And she was like, let's just try it. And I ended up going to the thing, and we checked it out. And then they said about this program that was in London that was a thing where you would intern at the BBC, and basically you would do like they only take 8 students, and they would do like for a semester you would intern there, and then you would also take classes at the BBC. So you would take like their training courses, and each week would be like a new training course. And I said, I want to do that. And that's when me and my mom were like, okay, let's zone in. Let's go to the website. We found out that they had a film program for like high schoolers, like a summer film program. So I started working on my submission, got denied the first time I applied. Then the second time I applied, I was able to get in. And
so you applied 2 separate summers?
So I applied sophomore year, but then I ended up going to UCLA summer program because I didn't get in for the summer program in sophomore year. But like, it wasn't like NYU still wasn't like the main focus. It was just like, this would be a good extracurricular. Right.
Gotcha.
But then once I knew I wanted to go to NYU, I was like, okay, it's really game time. Like, I got to apply for this program, see if I can get in, because that will also be like a good indicator if I really want to do this and spend like all this money to go there. So I end up getting into the summer film program there. It's like, I think it's like, it might be like 6 weeks, and you're in the dorms and you work on a project, and you work with the college film professors there, and you make a short film. And
that's awesome.
It was really cool. It was like, they had us busy from like sun up to sundown. And then like, even some nights they would have us busy, and you couldn't leave the dorms. Like, it was pretty locked down. But it was really, it really helped me. And like, I remember I got like maybe the second or third week in like the 6-week program, I got pretty homesick. And I was like really like missing my mom because I was having a hard time connecting with some of my other classmates.
Yeah, people in NYU film programs I could see being pretty out there and maybe difficult to connect with. I don't know.
Yeah, it just was like, it was at that time, and I don't think even a few of my friends that I was in the program know this, but they were like, they liked a lot of avant-garde movies like I had never seen. Like I was like, I like comedy, and
Yeah, they're
like,
a little snobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're great. You know, now I'm like I have a lot of great friends and like they understand me and stuff like that. Like I had one friend who used to, anytime anyone would ask her favorite movie in film school, she would say Step Brothers and just like wait for the reaction because she knew that was not what they were looking for.
Yeah. They want to hear a classic or a foreign film or something that most people hadn't heard of, but they heard of.
Yeah. And I remember my mom like just telling me, like, I love my mom so much because like I remember her telling me, being like, you know, you gotta just like, you gotta remember why you're there. You're there to like make films and like you're there to get better so you can like learn to be a better filmmaker. And I ended up having the best time, and it was like I was able to make a movie that was going to be the calling card, and ultimately it helped me get into NYU film school. And
it's cool.
Yeah. And so it was rough. It was difficult. I was learning a lot because there was a lot of things that like I didn't like before then. I was more of a click and drag kind of editor, which it wasn't as efficient as it could be for me. So they were like really trying to teach me how to keyboard edit. And it took a minute for me to like get to familiar with the keyboarding. And then once I did, I was like, oh, okay, I get this. But it was like a lot of like learning a lot of foundation and a lot of also just techniques, and that was like really hard. It was hard to like be like, this is my life now.
Yeah,
but
learning a lot of new things, unlearning some other things. I suppose this was between junior and senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So this was sounds like the first time you were really away from home.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time that I was really away, like a long time. Like,
so it makes sense you got homesick.
Yeah, because the thing is that like it was just kind of like I just missed. I just felt like it also was like in like this weird isolated, like, you know, you don't know any of these people. There's like no one you like really know. And
right.
it was like, and I think like maybe like the second day at the camp, I had caught like all these girls talking bad about me that were like I was supposed to, they were in like the group that you like had to go to the dorms and had to go eat with. And I was just like, I do not like these people. Like it just was a lot of.
That's hard. And you're in New York City, like by yourself, and you don't know anyone else, and you're not 21. You're not going to bars. You're a kid.
Yeah, and you couldn't leave the dorm because we were all under 18, so
right.
we were all like inside. But it ended up working out. Like I ended up actually making a lot of good friends that I still talk to today from it, and but it was really rough, and I'm glad that I sticked with it, and I'm glad that my mom has always pushed me to like never surrender.
Were you able to see New York City and see some sights at all while you were there, or was it? It sounds like it was mostly pretty intensive.
Yeah, it was like a pretty intense film program, which I appreciated. I liked that it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
because I have a worker mentality. Like the only reason I wanted to go to the only reason I was like, yeah, I'm so down to live in London for like a really long time is because I also knew I could work.
Because you could work on at the BBC. I mean, like
at the BBC.
You have a worker's mentality as opposed to what?
Like I like to go on trips and also have work to do. Like I don't like to just like go to someplace and just like go to someplace. Like when I lived in London, I went to Ireland and I had no agenda. I was like, you know what? We're just going to go and like hang. And like I had scheduled like some things, but like not a lot of things. And I realized that it was like a lot of just like resting. And I was like, what's here? What's popping? And they were like, calm down, woman. And
yeah, I'm a little bit like that, I think.
I realized that I was just like, I like go. So I realized that like I like a lot of schedule and itinerary and like things to do.
That's good.
Like when I go to New York to visit, I usually will visit like 3 to 4 people a day. And then like when I was in New York, like before quarantine, about like in early February, I went to New York. I did 9 shows in 8 days. And every day I visited like 4 or 5 people or like took meetings.
Nice.
And then I was like we're like talking like lunch, dinner. And then I was also trying to do some like open mics. I was like exhausted. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where do you get the energy from? But it sounds like you do not have unlimited energy. You have your limits.
I you know what, I do, but then I push past. I go, okay, we're only going to be, I think it's because if I go like, you can only do this from this time, it's like I made it. Like I can make the time. Like I was seeing people at 7 a.m. like squeeze into my day, and then I would end the day at like 12 or like 1 after coming back from like the club.
You know,
like not the nightclub, just from like stand up.
Yeah, you know what I'm realizing? It's like I've kind of working on a lot of different things and keeping busy, but it's like between like exercising, working on projects, running around, partying, and not sleeping enough. Like you can't have all those things going on.
No, for sure.
You gotta either get sleep and not party. You gotta either work hard and not work out. You gotta either work out and take a break from running around. When you do all of like 5 of those things, that's when, for me, things start to get bad.
When I came back to LA, I slept for like 2 days. My feet were like, I think I broke my boots because I was just walking around so often, like so much.
Yeah, people say you can't catch up on sleep, but I think you can, because I feel like I do, and it helps.
Yeah, me too.
So that's an old wives' tale that you can't catch up on sleep. You can. I say you can. Science.
I think you can. I slept for like 16 hours when I got back.
Gotcha. So did you apply to other schools besides NYU, or was it just
so I had like I feel like so weird talking about myself, but this is the nature of it.
Well, you're allowed. You can share whatever you want to share and not share whatever you don't want to share.
So when I was a sophomore, I was really afraid of. Well, actually, I'll take that back. I won't say that story just because it's going to get us off track. But okay. I kind of was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I can tie that story in. So basically, in sophomore year, I went to the guidance counselor and was like, hey, can I talk to you? Blah, blah, blah. Well, the guidance counselor, at the time, I had like really good grades. Like I might have had like a 3.8 or a 3.9, something really high. And so we were talking about prospective schools that I wanted to go to. And I was like, well, I'm thinking like USC, NYU, maybe something like that. And the teacher goes, I think you should really look at junior college.
The guidance counselor?
The guidance counselor.
Guidance counselors are always the worst. No one ever says I had a good guidance counselor.
Yeah. And I was like, I think I'll be fine. Right. I think I'll be fine. And I had 2 guidance counselors. Luckily, senior year, I had a different guidance counselor. That was amazing. But sophomore year, I had this guidance counselor. And she was like, you should. I was like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, with your grades? And I was like, I have pretty good grades. And
yeah, I thought you just said you're like a 3.9 or something.
Yeah, so she's like, no, like we got to be realistic, like with your grades. Like if you're not doing like summer school here, like I don't know. Like, and then she was like, have you been going to tutoring? And I was like, no, I haven't been going to tutoring. And she's like, oh my God, you need to go to tutoring. Like, she's like, why are you talking about going to NYU? Like your grades like are sucking. And she's like, I just can't believe like what's coming out of your mouth.
I'm confused. Why is she saying your grades are sucking if you have a 3.9?
Wait for it. So then she goes and like let's look at your aptitude test. Well, yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I'm so confused. I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, my grades are good. And she's like, don't talk back to me. Like, your grades are awful.
Fuck?
Like, yeah. So I'm like, really, like, in my head, I'm like that. But I'm like, I can't talk back, like, whatever. Because, like, you know, and so she's like, in your aptitude test, you know, it says you should be like a plumber or something, blah, blah, blah. So
what
then
the hell?
I was
No
like,
offense to plumbers.
no, exactly. No offense to plumbers, but that's when I realized when she said your aptitude says you're plumbers, because my aptitude test said I should work in hospitality at a hotel or something like that. And I remember that because I was like, what? That's weird. So not that working at a hotel is weird, but it just was like something I had never seen
Thought
myself.
of,
Yeah.
Right.
So I go, I don't, my aptitude test didn't say I should be a plumber. And she's like, no, your aptitude test says right here you should be a plumber. And I said, no, my aptitude test doesn't say I should be a plumber. And she's like, yes, it does. And I said, no, it said I needed to be a hotel worker. And she looks at me again and she goes, oh my gosh, you're Lexie. You're not Jacqueline, who is the other Black girl at my school. And she had pulled up Jacqueline's grades.
She had what? She had the wrong grades.
She pulled up Jacqueline's grades. She had like D's and F's and stuff like that.
God.
And so we were having two different conversations.
Wow.
And then she like pulled up my grades and she was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And she like left. She was like, you're fine. And I was just like, what just happened? Like, I was just in like a 20-minute meeting where 19 of them was like basically being yelled at for my life decisions. And then in 19, you're like, the 19th minute, you're like, okay, this is good.
How did you feel after that? You must have been pissed off.
I was. And then you know what the thing is? She pulled me out of class twice, 2 times after that. Like when I was in Algebra 2 Trig, to tell me I was failing Algebra 2 Trig when I was at 110% in that class.
Does she know who you are?
Like, I was so
How
worried.
racist is this woman?
I was so worried that I was going to be the case of like, remember in the movie Orange County? I don't know if you've ever seen that with basically the guidance counselor sends the wrong scores to like the school that this guy's applying to. And they like rejected him. And he's like, how could they reject me? And then they realized that like the counselor set like the wrong. So I was like really worried about that. But anyway, so senior year, I met with another guidance counselor who knew who I was.
That's good.
Yeah, that's very important. And she was like, I told her what I wanted to do. I was like, these are the schools I'm applying to. I'm going to apply to, I think it was like NYU, USC, RADA, which is a dramatic, which is an acting school in London, and Lambda, which is another acting school in London. And then I was looking up, I was thinking about applying to NIDA, which is an acting school in Australia. And I was like, those are the schools I want to apply to. And she was like, well, you should. And then I think maybe UCLA, because they have a good film program. And then she was like, well, I'm not going to send out your application unless you choose, because she felt like all of those were like dream schools. Like none of them were what she would call realistic schools. So she was like, I think you should choose. Like, she was like, I'm not going to send your grades out unless you choose to apply to 2 other schools that I feel like are more in your range. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I didn't want to, because I was like, I felt like it was a waste of money.
Yeah, you have to pay for that.
Yeah, so I ended up, I think I applied to Chapman, and then I also applied to some of the UCs. I think I applied to
Chapman has a good film school though, I think.
Yeah, Chapman does have a good film school, but it wasn't like, I think why I was anti-Chapman was because I needed to make a new film in addition. And I was just like, oh, that's like, it was like the turnaround was going to be quick, but I did apply and I made the film. And I'm glad I made the film actually, because I had included someone in the film that was near and dear to me. And then like the week after I made the film, they like died. So it was nice to have like them talking. But it was nice to have them talking about me, like that I had like of them, like what they thought about me.
Yeah, I love I love that you're smiling during this whole telling all this.
Well, no, I was in tears when it happened, but then it was like, okay, like it's now been a lot of time since they've passed, so I'm like, I can look and I can go like, thank God that teacher pushed me to do that, so that I have them on camera saying like, sharing all these moments, and like I wouldn't have interviewed them had she not pushed me to do this interview project.
Gotcha.
So it was a kind of a blessing in disguise. And so, but I also, because they thought I was crazy because I was only going to submit to NYU early decision. I was like, I'm going to get on in NYU. And they were like, you're not going to get in NYU. And I'm like,
Who said that you're the second guidance counselor?
Yeah, the second guidance counselor. And I said,
guidance counselors, such assholes.
And the thing about it was I was on the NYU's website at the time from the film program, like from the summer film program. They had me on their website, like in the Tish's film website. Like it was me. I was like, they aren't going to deny me. I'm on their website.
I mean that's not no guarantee, but it's
no,
not
exactly.
It's not a bad sign. It's not a bad sign.
I felt like it was a good omen, and I was like I was like a cocky high schooler, so I was like, it's gonna happen. And then when I got into NYU, then everyone, like the guidance counselor, was floored. She was shocked.
Fuck them.
They were all
mad about this.
No, it was funny because I had gotten rejected from my high school's film program. And so they were like the most shocked.
We have a lot of people to get back at.
Yeah.
I'm going to get all these people.
Well, you know what? It's like I've been really obsessed lately with Save The Last Dance. Not Save the Last Dance. That's a different movie. The Last Dance.
The Bulls documentary.
Yeah, the Bulls documentary.
I'm all caught up. We can talk about that for a long time too, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it's like amazing how many of these people were like told like nothing's gonna happen for you. And then like, I mean, you look at like Scottie Pippen, he was the water boy on his team.
Michael Jordan cut from his, from the varsity team during high school.
And then he was the third pick and everyone's like, nothing's gonna happen with him. And then, like, even looking at, like, the Detroit Pistons, that everyone was like, they're just a bunch of thugs. They're never going to win. And then they ended up, I mean, they are kind of bullies, but they also won a lot of stuff.
Does that motivate you? People telling you can't do something? It must.
100%. Because, like, the thing is, like, in high school, I also was devastated because I had applied to the high school of my choice because they had a media program. And I was like, basically, it was like a performing arts school, except they had a track for future filmmakers and future doctors, right? And I got rejected from the filmmaking path. And I had made like this animation film that I spent a lot of time and I thought it was good. And I was like, I couldn't believe that they didn't let me in. Wait, what were you going to say?
No, I just said that stinks.
Yeah, I ended up finding out that they actually didn't even look at the project.
What the hell, man?
Yeah, they had only looked at the storyboards I made, and the storyboards were like bad. So that's when I learned like never said anything that that it's like you feel like it can't stand on its own.
Right.
Because they looked at the storyboards and then they didn't watch the film. And because I talked to the teacher and he said, "Oh, if I saw this film, you definitely would have gotten in."
Oh man.
Because it was claymated. I did like claymation, so it was like I had worked on like making the figures and making them talk.
I'm sure it was great.
And but it was good because I'm so glad though, looking back, that like I didn't get into that program. Like it's like when you look back at like The Last Dance, like I'm glad that like everything happened the way that it did. Because had I gotten into the film program, and my mom always stresses this, like my mom's really big about like hard work and like determination and like, everything. But had I gotten into the film program at my school, I wouldn't have learned a bunch of skills that I had learned. The thing is that I started editing on my own, like on like out of school, and I started learning about filmmaking out of school, like trying to figure out like where could I learn, because I felt like I was already falling behind. And the thing was that had I gotten into the program, I think I probably would have been complacent and I wouldn't have asked like my teachers, like, hey, can I make a film for this? Can I make a movie for this? Can I make a thing for this? You
wouldn't have been as determined to push yourself, because you would have been like, oh, I'm in the program. They're going to just feed me everything I need to know, so I don't need to push myself.
Exactly. But because everyone in the program was like super hush hush, I didn't know. And I was like, they learned so much. I don't know anything. Like, let me try to catch up. Turns out though, at the end of the day, what I didn't know about my school's film program was that it was, they had specialization. So like people that edit, only edit. People that wrote, only wrote. People that directed, only directed.
Man, that is really specialized for high school.
So I didn't know that. So at the time, I didn't realize that like I was learning everything when they were like learning like one thing. I thought everyone was learning everything. So it was just like, it was like this weird thing where I felt like I had to, it ended up being a blessing because then I was able to take those skills. And like when I went to New York, it ended up being really good because I knew a lot of the things.
Yeah, you gave yourself, it sounds like, a more well-rounded filmmaking education.
Because I think it's like a superpower, right? I get like really anxious that I'm falling behind and then I end up going in hyper speed.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment where you got the acceptance letter to NYU?
Yes, I do. Because, okay, so remember how I was talking about my aunt had actually just died. She was the one in the Chapman video that I was telling you about that I'd interviewed her. So we had just come back from finally packing up her place because she had already prepaid like her rent in advance. So no one had touched it like months after she had died. We had just kind of all left it. And so we went to her place. We had gotten, sorry, this is really sad.
That's
we
okay.
had gotten stuff. I had taken like her table and like her boxing gloves and like a few little toys that she had on her table. And we had just come back. And the thing was like my aunt, when she was in the ICU, she kept telling everybody when we go visit her, like Lexie's going to get into film school. Lexie's going to get into film school at NYU. And I hadn't even gotten in yet. And when we came back from packing her stuff, I ended up going to the mailbox and there was a letter, and I felt
this is after she had passed.
After she had passed, but we were packing up packing up her house, and it was right after we came back from packing up her house. I went to the mailbox, and I saw the letter, and it kind of almost felt like she was like there, like with me. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
No, that's a nice moment for sure.
And then I like was screaming, and my mom was really excited, and so we were just like overjoyed.
Cool. Well, tell me about NYU the second go around.
NYU was amazing. It was really fun. I had a great time. Lots of hijinks. Like freshman year was, I got to like learn the city. I had a lot of crazy roommates. I also had to, I had to work full time at Apple freshman year. So I had a full-time job, and then I was doing 40 hours at Apple and then 40 hours of school.
Wow.
Which I don't even know how, and then I had to do projects. I don't even know. I was young. Let's just put it like I was just like young and
I don't know how that's possible to do.
Because there's not enough hours in the day, but somehow it all ended up working out. Like
especially for not to cut you off, but especially for a filmmaking major, it's not like you're a liberal arts major where it's like, okay, study at home, read a book, memorize the facts, whatever, learn, write, take a test, and that's it. You got to coordinate projects and people and gear and everything that could go wrong does go wrong with filmmaking.
Yeah, it was pretty, I mean, I feel like, I remember taking off for the week of finals because in finals week, they let the editing suites, you could, for 24 hours. So I would be in the editing suites at night playing catch up because I was like really behind. And I remember being so delirious that I started singing Don't Rain on My Parade in the middle of the editing suites. Like it was like, but like, because at the time there was only like 4 people that had done like the full 24 hours. And one of them was my friend. And we just started running around the editing lab, which had like 20 plus computers. And we were like, don't rain. Like,
oh man, everyone's losing their mind. Did you get discounts at the Apple store on gear?
I did. And I got a lot of, I think I got Photoshop and like the whole entire suite for free. I'd won it in like a contest. And like I was
going to ask you, were you able to get discounts for other people too?
Yeah, you got some discounts. Like it's not as much as you would think, but I did get some discounts. Like I bought some I helped my friends buy some computers because I think like every quarter you could get 1 computer for yourself and like 3 for friends at like discounted rates.
You're making me think of, Morgan Jay, the comedian?
Yeah.
He worked at the Apple store too back in the day, and he was telling me he just gives discounts to everyone. I don't know if he was supposed to do that though, but you made me think of that.
I mean, like you could, like if I was like, hey, do you go to school? Like then you could give like a student discount. Yeah. I didn't really give discounts there. It's funny. I used to work at a ripoff Apple store one time, like one summer, sophomore summer. And they actually didn't have prices on all the items. So you could either upcharge or undercharge, however you're feeling.
Yeah, I got to get up. Is that place still around? Because I'll recommend some friends go there in New York.
Oh, no, this is actually an LA store.
Oh,
for summers, I would come out here because I could also get internships.
Yeah, you could tell me the name of that place off the air. Well, tell me more about NYU. Were there any ups and downs, or what were the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, every year was ups and downs. There was always very big challenges to be had. I remember, like, there was a lot of times that I wanted to go home, but like I couldn't afford to go home. And
literally, the flight you could
say it again.
You mean literally you could not afford to fly home, or like you just came so far into NYU you just couldn't? No turning back, kind of thing.
It was like. Well, it was also like the ticket. So it was like I could go home for like holidays, but like I wouldn't go home for like spring break. Like spring break, I would be in the city because that would be like a time that I wouldn't like. My parents were kind of like, just like choose when you want to come home.
Yeah, New York is far from LA.
Exactly. And they were like, you can either come on holidays or you can come back like on spring break. So I was like, I'll just stay in the city on spring break. And like my mom always has like a great saying. I love my mom, if you haven't already told.
I get it.
I love her, and she used to say this thing to me when I had to stay for work. She would say, "You can eat tuna now, so that you can eat steak later." Like, so it was like, work hard now, so you can eat steak later.
I'm eating a lot of tuna right now, my friend.
But you know what? Our day is coming.
I hope so.
It is.
I think so.
And I remember, but it was always fun. Like I always had activities when I had to stay home for spring break. Like one spring break, I was prepping to try to, for the interview of the BBC thing. Cause they only take like 8 applicants, but they have they have a lot of applicants that apply for this BBC program.
I bet.
So during spring break, cause I was home, I just watched all this BBC shows. Like I watched as many BBC shows as I could get my hands on. Like of their things. I learned how to delineate between like BBC 1, BBC 2, BBC 3, BBC 4. And I was able to tell you, like, if you pitched me a show, I would be able to tell you which channel it probably would fall upon based on like the presenters and like the things. Cause like I knew that the interview process was like really rough because people were saying that like the British people that you interviewed with, like they're not going to give you anything. Like there's not going to be anything on your face. It's kind of almost like I don't know if you've ever been to a stand-up show where it's mostly industry watching, but they never laugh. They just like watch, they observe.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Yes,
this is the mentality or how it goes.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, I need to come correct with all the information because I only had met one girl that had ever done BBC, and she just said, all you need to know is like be super prepared and, you know, be very direct and they'll like you. So like I watched everything and I was like, I love this show and I love this show and I love this show. And my interview was pretty dry, but I had applied thinking like, well, if I don't get in this year, I'll apply next year with the insight that like I learned. Sure. So I end up getting in, go sophomore year. Not sophomore year. I go junior year. Oh my God. I also had the best Russian film professor. His name was Boris.
This is at NYU or in London?
At NYU. He was crazy. He would say he was great. He was a great filmmaker. Great filmmaking person, but he would say like the most ridiculous things. But like it was like you're always learning from him. But he would say things like, what did he used to say? He used to say to me like he would be like, "Why did you make bad film? You know it was bad film when you made it." And then he would
also
be
direct.
Like, yeah, exactly. And then I chose him because I knew he was hard, right? Like anytime there was an easy or a hard teacher, I would always go with the hard teacher. Because
you are quite something.
Because I always want to learn from the best. And I always don't want anybody to baby talk me. Like if it's hard, like I want to go, like I feel like that's also like my style of like stand up, right? Like if there's a hard room where like people aren't paying attention and they aren't talking, like I will go back and I will go back and I will go back and I will take my beating, because then when I go to a room where people are paying attention, it's like working with like weights off. It's like so easy and fun.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like I used to be really into boxing, Like I used to like box recreationally. I never sparred, but I always liked the, you know, like the training that goes in with it.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I had this really hard teacher named Boris, and he would always say things to me that like still stick with me today, where he says, you know, sometimes when you start a movie, you want to start with one idea and then move, like expand, right? Like one solid image that you're like starting a movie on, like something that you can just grasp onto and then pull out from there. And then he always said to me too, he said, you know, characters need to make mistakes because no one wants to see someone perfect on screen.
Right.
And he would just like, he would drop knowledge. And then he would also be like, in Soviet Russia, we would always have to lift weights to lift cameras. You guys are so weak. Like he would say things like that. Where
he's a walking meme.
He is a walking meme, but it was so perfect. He was like so perfect. And he made everyone pretty much, I never cried from him, but a lot of my friends cried. And I remember I was thinking in my head, like, oh, I got to get into London like this. Like, I got to get in when I apply because I was like, I don't know how my GPA is going to hold, because he would send grades, but I think grades were also kind of arbitrary because like my first grades from him for films were like C's and D's, but then I still ended up with like an A- in the class. So I have no idea. But like my last two films he really liked.
Yeah, it almost seems like with film school, there's a lot of, you know, subjectivity with grading. So it almost sounds to me like he was like purposely saying, I'm going to give this person low grades just to challenge them and push them to work harder. I have no intention of ultimately failing or giving them bad grades in the long run at the end of the semester, but I want to push them.
That's actually a very interesting theory. I could actually see him doing that, but he was so scary that I was like, he might actually do it. Like I don't know. One, like he would always like in class, he would be like, who is slowest director? And then he'd pull up to someone.
Who's the slowest director?
Who's the slowest director?
Meaning what? What do you mean slow director?
We didn't know what he meant. We were like, what?
Like and slow mentally?
We were like, what is he talking about?
And work pace?
Then we realized that he was talking about a Bresson movie where this guy pulls out a wallet and it's like literally like 12 seconds to like build tension. He's like, Bresson is slowest director.
Okay.
And then he would like play the same clip again and we were like, oh, we're sorry. And then he'd be like, who's slowest director? So you always knew Bresson.
Oh man.
Yeah,
that's cool. So London was cool. It sounds like
London was cool, and then I came back, and I loved London. I absolutely loved it. It was wild though. I had a roommate who dated a fire breather at the time, and that was an interesting experience. But it was cool. I made a lot of London friends, and then I actually would take side classes in London. So I would like.
You did.
I know I'm too much. But I took classes at like RADA. They would offer classes for people under 25, because since RADA is such a hard school to get into, they did it as almost like a supplemental training for people that like kind of wanted to study at RADA but weren't accepted in. And so I met a lot of cool people that I still talk to today from those RADA classes.
That's the acting program, right?
Yeah. So
I was gonna ask. So you always kind of dabbled in acting. It sounds like you did a little bit of high school theater. You kind of were interested in like possibly for a college route. Now you're taking some classes. So It sounds like performing was sort of a secondary interest to filmmaking.
Yeah, like I always loved performing. I loved acting and being silly. I just think for a while I didn't give myself the okay to do it. Like I just didn't, you know what I mean? Like I think I was like,
doesn't sound like you had time.
I also think I was like a little afraid. Like when my friends would be like, hey, you want to act in this? I would be like, great. And like one of the best things in London was like we did a class where we had to do live editing, right? So we would do like our version of like the news kind of with like different cameras and like 3 angles, and you had to cut live. But because they couldn't like afford actors, obviously they would hire a presenter to be like the actual presenter, but then they would have us be like the guest. And I loved being the guest because I would try to break the presenter every time I was there. I would do like a different character and then be like, my lungs are blah, blah, blah. And then and like one time I think I couldn't keep an accent. Whatever accent I was doing, I kept molding it. Like it wasn't sticking. And the people that were teaching us were like they were like we really like Anna's performance, and I was like, what about my performance? And they're like, we just don't know what's gonna happen with you. Like, they were like, we don't know who you're gonna be. You scare us.
Oh boy.
And so that was really, I mean, they meant it in the best way possible, but that was really funny. And then yeah, that was a great time. And then I came back, worked on my junior thesis. And that was like really tricky. And then my senior thesis, if I thought my junior thesis was hard, my senior thesis was hard because I ran out of money halfway through it. Like when I was shooting my senior thesis film. And I had to I was like, Mom, I don't know what I'm going to do. I cried to my mom several times because I was just like, I don't know how this movie's going to get made.
Stressful.
Yeah. And my teacher, I don't think he particularly liked my film, but he liked my style of directing. So he was like, okay. Cause I'm not a visual director, but I'm very good with performances. I really like performances because I really wanted to act. So I was really good at studying directing, and I took a lot of directing courses and stuff like that. So he was like, okay, you can do it. And of course I chose to make a film that had, I needed a class of 30 kids for. Right.
Bad idea.
So just feeding them alone was a really expensive thing. So my mom was like, well, what can you do? What can you do if if you're not able to get the money and you just have because the school would give us cameras and lighting. So she was like, what could you do if you can't get the money, but you have the equipment? How can you feed this people? So then my mom really was she had reminded me when I was in student council all those years ago in 6th grade, I put on an event and I asked people to donate stuff, right? I was like, hey, can you donate? So I was thinking about that. And I was like, well, they donated to a little kid. And then I also was thinking about in school, if you asked Chipotle at this one Chipotle, if you asked them, they would give you 50 burritos. But my senior year, it had been abused so much that they stopped doing it. They stopped giving away the 50 burritos.
For film crews and students?
For student films, yeah. Because you needed to have a letter, and then you needed to write some stuff. So then I had this idea, and I was like, okay, Chipotle would give. What if I just reached out to a bunch of people? So I started walking the streets, and I would stop at shops, and I must have emailed about 100 people asking if they would donate food to the film. And I got about 10 yeses. And then some of them were we'll just give it to you, no strings attached. And then some of them were strings attached. One sandwich shop was going to give us 2-3 feet sandwiches, but I had to go to the dorms and put flyers underneath everyone's door about this sandwich shop.
Yeah.
And I was like, done, I'll do it. And I sent them videos of me doing it.
Nice.
And I was like, we're going to make this happen. So I ended up getting I got sandwiches donated. I got a bunch of tacos from my favorite taco joint in New York. I got rotisserie chicken. We got all this food. And then I was able to get some funding so we could get the film done. And then I also I had some stocks from Apple that I cashed out.
When there's a will, there's a way, I guess.
Yeah, from working freshman year stocks. I was buy stocks, and it was so sad. But then again, looking back, I was really sad and angry cashing them because it was it had come to the height of the thing, and people were it's only going to go up from there.
Yeah.
But then after it actually crashed down. So then it ended up actually working in my favor that I was forced to cash them out, because then it dropped to $70 or something per stock.
It worked out for you.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out for me. So it was kind of sometimes when you're sad about something it ends up working in your favor.
Cool. Quite a story. Wow.
Yeah. And then to answer your big question of how I got into stand-up, so I moved back to LA after film school, and I was thinking that something big was going to happen. I was going to sell a script or something big, and nothing happened.
You were writing at the time, or you had scripts written?
I was writing at the time, and I had scripts, and I had And also during this whole time, I've been doing like internships. So like I'd come out to LA and do some internships during the summer. So like I interned at Nickelodeon, I interned at BBC America, I interned like a bunch of different places. And so when I came out, I was applying for jobs, couldn't get anything, couldn't get arrested, couldn't get, like, I remember one time applying for this job that was not even minimum wage. It was like an apprenticeship and they still said no. Like, it was like, and it was like, it was something that I could have done, like, obviously. And I remember like all of my friends, like we all had these experiences where like these jobs that should have hired us were like, yeah, no. Like one of my friends.
Is it just because it's so competitive? Is that just what it is? It's just limited space for so many applicants?
I think it was like, it was competitive. I think it also too was like, they were, I don't know if it was like, but it just seemed like a lot of me and my friends just couldn't get gigs. Like I remember one of my friends, he had applied to Target and they declined him. And he was like, this is my suicide note. And I was like, luckily things did happen for him, so it got better. But I was like, it was kind of like we kept putting stuff out and like stuff wasn't happening. And then finally, like on the 8th month of me trying to like bust my butt trying to get a job, I had an old boss from Nickelodeon reach out to me telling me that she was at DreamWorks Animation and asked me if I wanted to be her assistant. And I was like, yeah, I would love to be your assistant. I just want any job right now. And they were like, well, I thought you wanted to like write and direct. And I was like, I still do, but this might be good. And then I ended up getting into casting. And then mostly like an undercover cop, I ended up getting like really into the scene in DreamWorks. And then I was like, this is getting too much. So then I started, because I was working so many hours, like, and I really didn't have any free time.
Yeah, those assistant jobs on desks are long, crazy hours, and I hear it's hard to focus on your own thing when you're doing those jobs.
Yeah, and it's also like they don't want you to be doing most of your.
Yeah, they want you to be. They want to be your number one focus.
Exactly, and which I mean is fair, but I would sneak off because I had all this disposable income that I wasn't spending because I was pretty much at the job every day and sometimes on weekends. And I ended up signing up for all these improv classes, and just had so much fun, loved it. Okay,
I see where we're going.
Yeah, so I end up meeting this guy when I'm taking improv classes. And he's like, you should try to apply to a bunch of different schools, like a bunch of other different improv schools. So I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I end up getting into this, I end up going to this really competitive, cutthroat improv school. And I move up pretty fast, right? And when I was at one of the levels, I had previously like jumped, right? So I was like, I was moving up, and I had this one teacher, and she pulled me outside and she said, "You're never going to make it. I don't think you're funny. You should just quit now."
What the hell?
Yeah. And I was devastated.
Why would someone say that? Especially you said you were already moving up through the levels, so obviously you're doing something right and doing something well.
But she was like, it was a fluke. Like, she was like, maybe you could go to, and then she listed it. She said, maybe you should try this other improv school because here you're never going to make it. Like, and then she asked me what like my dream was. And I was like, oh, I want to write, direct, and act. And she was like, huh. Like that, like, huh. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
What was this person? I mean, was this is obviously not a secure person. This is not probably a super successful person either, I would guess.
Yeah. But you know what the crazy thing was, is like in class, she would always say that I reminded her of herself. So it was like a weird thing. And then she was always
hates
like
herself.
Yeah. And then she would always,
I don't know.
Then she would always be like, "You're not funny." And then, but everyone would laugh at my scenes. Like, like everyone would laugh. And then she was like, I just don't see it. So, and then I remember there was this guy and he hated me too. It was like the worst. And he would like, anytime I would like, she would give me a bad note. He'd be like, ha. And then he would like clap.
What the hell?
So I started actually having performance anxiety in the first time in my life. Like I would go to class
Yeah, I believe
and
it.
I would feel like I would feel a little bit like I couldn't perform. And I was like, this isn't good. Like I would actually, my stomach would, have like a physical reaction. Like I couldn't eat before class because I physically couldn't keep anything down.
Yeah.
So I ended up being like, you know what? My dream's not going to die with this woman. So I started doing like an eat, love, pray of improv, right? Like I started taking all these weird improv classes. Like I took like a feminist improv class. I almost took like a goat with yoga improv class. I was taking like improv in the dark class. Like I was like, my dreams are, I was taking like a singing improv. I was taking all these classes trying to get, because I was working. So I was like, this is the only thing that really I come alive with. Right.
Right.
And, what ended up happening was one of my mom's friends, my mom was telling her friend about like how I was like in this kind of like rut, right? Like she's like, Lexie's in this dead end, but like she's going to get out of it. Like, cause my mom's really optimistic. She's like, she's working on it. And like that lady is like a BA, whatever. My mom is like saying, she's like, and so her friend goes, well, maybe there's a improv class I know where you just talk about your day. And everybody goes around and like they just improv by themselves for like 5 to 6 minutes. And she was like, I think you should do that. And I was really out of options. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I ended up taking this class with this lady who I didn't know at the time was a guru in like the like alternate comedy scene. Her name's Beth Lapidus. And she's like she had like one of the hottest rooms in the 90s where like Margaret Cho and Andy Dick and Kathy Griffin came out of their room and like and Janine Garofalo, like that Janine Garofalo was already established, but like she also would perform in that room too. Sure. Like this like kind of like talking and not typical comedy. And so I was like, so I started going to these classes, but because I'm working super late and her class happened to be on a weekday, I would always get there an hour and a half late, right? Yeah. So when I got there, they were like, oh, it's your go. So I didn't know what the class was about because I missed that whole spiel. So I would come in and I would start talking about my day. I'd be like, yeah, so da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da. And da-da-da-da. And I would like add like little funny observations that I noticed to my day. And by the 7th class, she was like, so you want to do stand-up? And I was like, no. And she's like, because that's what you've been doing every week is like, is stand-up. Oh my
goodness.
That's when and then I was like, no, isn't this like you just come in and you talk about your day? Isn't that what the class is? Because that's what my mom's friend had told me. And she goes, no, that's not the class. Like you could bring in whatever you want to work on. And you've just been like monologuing. And so she really helped me and she was like, you should do stand-up. And she really pushed me. And she was like, hey, if you want to be a writer, do stand-up because if you write, people will, if you do, it's hard for you to get people to read a script of yours, right? It'd be like, hey, this is funny, read it. But it's easier for people to see you're funny and go, hey, you're funny. What do you have for us to read?
Sure.
And so that's when I was like, okay. And then I quit my job and I started doing stand-up because I had already been saving all this money because I was working and I wasn't really spending it because like I don't party. So it was mostly just like classes every now and then. And so I like quit my job and I just was like, okay, I'm going to just start doing stand-up and like freelance things. And she was right. Like actually within 8 months, I was able to write like a commercial for IKEA from doing stand-up.
You were able to write a commercial for IKEA?
Yeah. It was really weird. One of the guys I had PA'd with when I worked in, I worked on set in a student film with on New York. He ended up becoming the head of branded content at Complex. And he needed someone, like all of their writers were out on vacation and he needed someone to write a spot really quickly for IKEA. And he was like, I saw your stand-up clip, thought it was funny, because I had posted some stand-up clip, and he was like, thought it was funny. He was like, do you want to write this? And I was like, yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
That's how it happened.
I want to go back something. I want to ask you, what in that like class where you're monologuing and accidentally doing stand-up comedy without knowing it, what kind of things do the other people in the class bring and perform?
Well, I was so late. I only saw maybe like one or two people. So I was just like, oh, okay. Like, I guess they wanted to, like one other girl was a stand-up. So she would typically go late, but she would just go late because she just wanted to go late. Like, she wanted to watch everybody else, and then she would like comment on it.
Yeah, I got you.
So, but really, like, I took the class several times, like before I quit my job. And like after, like, I did like a couple 8-week runs of it. But the class really, like, other people would bring in like scripts, or they would like kind of talk through their feelings. Cause basically what it was like, you would get a full 10 minutes. So you would get 5 minutes to do your thing. And then you would get 5 minutes where she would like work on you. Like, how can we make this stronger? Or how can we talk through what just happened? So sometimes it's like, it depends on what everybody needs. It's more of like a schoolhouse, like everybody's at different levels, but then she's like kind of catering to everyone's needs.
Gotcha.
And then there typically was a lecture that would happen before, which I found out the second time I took the class, because the first time I took the class, I was never there for the lectures.
Yeah. And where are we at now? Where do we go from there? Just on the comedy grind? What happened from
so then when I
took that class and started, I'm guessing you dove hardcore into stand-up, and you said you were going open mics. And
so what happened was, as a trend, I'm sorry, this is so weird. As a trend, again, Lexie just can't help herself and goes incredibly hard. Because basically I talked to my mom, and my mom is a very hard working woman. And she told me, she was like, Lexie, if you're going to do this, you have to go full in. Like, you can't go like out. Like, you can't do like less. Like, you can't do. So I'm like, and then my friend at the time, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Don't Tell comedy shows thing.
I haven't been to that, but I know of that show. Yeah.
So for Don't Tell comedy, they do a bunch all over the country. And my friend who I took, so the class that I was in, he was in that class too. He started about the same time I did, and he started it. So he was running a bunch of other rooms at the time, and he said, okay, I'll book you for, so I quit my job May 5th. That's when I started stand up. And he booked me for some date. I can't remember what it was, but it was like in June or July. So I knew I had like a month and a week for my first show. So my mom was like, okay, you got to work hard. So I started doing like 12 to 17 mics a week. And that's like pretty much the pace that like I keep of like open mics, not shows.
Yeah.
And so I'll do, if I'm working out like a really new set that I promised that I would do someplace, then I might do like 22 open mics a week just to like shine that out. So that's like really trying to stack that well, and just going to like, and I don't like to do like, there's certain places where you can do like 5 mics in a night, and I don't like to do those because I like to go different. I feel like different venues, you get different audience. So I like to see like, how is this going to work in this space versus this space versus this space versus this space versus this space. So it was like, so my mom was like, okay, you got to like really take this as a gift. Like, you've been able to save up all this money from like your assistant job. And she was like, you got to really put in the time to like make it work. Cause she knew everything that went into stand up. And then my mom was really influential in me, making, like, between her and Beth, they both were really influential in me when I first started making really specific choices. So like my mom was very much like, don't curse, because she said it even though it's hard, it's going to be easy for you to do when you're first starting out. Is if you make it like, you won't, if you don't go dirty, because then when you end up in a place and they're like, hey, can you do clean? You don't have to think too hard about it. you already are clean, so it'll be fine. And then Beth was always about like how you present yourself on stage. So she was like, how do you dress? How do you sell your image? Like, how do you think? Like, I personally, like we were talking before about how, because I smile a lot of people think I'm an idiot, right? So I kind of play into that. And I like when I hit the stage, that there's kind of some sort of confusion of like, should this woman be on stage, right? And then I hit them with a pow, because I know that what they're thinking, and I'm like, how can I be tense? Like, how can I be ahead of them?
Sure.
And where they're in, and kind of changing their focus. So if I've been like this the whole time, how can I go like this? And then them being caught off guard with like what they think that I should be. Like, I think some of the things that's hard is a lot of people expect me to be like a sassy Black woman. And I'm not that. Like, I've definitely accidentally got booked like maybe like 3 times I can think of, where they thought I was going to be a really sassy Black woman. And then I got there and they were like, you are not what we were expecting.
But were they pleased with what you brought?
One of them, to be truthfully honest, it was slightly suspicious. Like, I don't know if it actually was a proper comedy show, so I don't think that they were happy.
Yeah, that doesn't matter then if it's not a proper. There's some like, sketchy shows in there.
Yeah, it was a pretty sketchy, but they paid me, so I was like,
there
hey,
you go. That's good. That's
yeah, I like got my check and then I left. But like that, and so I'm now coming up to like my 3rd year in stand-up, and I've been able to go to a lot of festivals, and I work pretty regularly at the Haha Comedy Club. So that's cool. Like, up until like quarantine, I was sending my like avails weekly, and I was getting like pretty frequent spots in the club. And so I feel like a lot of it has to do with like me working hard. Like when,
sure, of course.
Like in The Last Dance, like honestly, hearing about how hard Michael Jordan worked after the Detroit Pistons beat him, I was like, yeah, when I get out of here, I'm going to work even harder.
Dude, I'm the same way. Like, I'm pretty inspired by this documentary. And like, the thing about seeing Michael Jordan and, present day Michael Jordan, listening to him talk, he almost makes it okay to hate in some ways. Like, he doesn't forgive Isaiah Thomas. He doesn't forgive his JV coach. He uses that to drive him. Like, I don't know. People say like holding grudges is like a bad thing. And I don't know if Michael Jordan holds grudges. I don't think he wakes up every day saying to himself, I hate Isaiah Thomas. How can I get back at Isaiah Thomas? But if you ask him about Isaiah Thomas, he'll be like, yeah, I don't like him, and I'm glad we beat him. So
he was like, don't show me the video. He was like, I know whatever he says on there, I don't even.
Yeah, whatever. You can show me whatever you want, but it's not going to prove to me that he's not an asshole.
Yeah, I think it's like you don't want. I think it's like you can turn pain into fuel, but I don't think it should become. I think hate gets a little dangerous, but I think you can use fuel to be like,
sure.
I want to show them, like, I'm a big, there's a quote that Louis Armstrong has that's like, I took the pain and made it the blues.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that. Like, I feel like I always like, I mean, that's what comedy is, right? Like, I like taking the moments where I'm like most angry about, and like, I like using it and like seeing like, hey, can I actually make it funny? Can I take my pain and make people laugh, and then they can like it can make them feel something, and like we can enjoy together. Like, one of I remember I do a bit, like I have a bit online about how I was like really upset because my sister so on my mom's side, I'm an only child, but like on my dad's side, who I see like occasionally, like, like on like sometimes during summer and weekends, like growing up, I had siblings, and I remember always feeling like not a part of it, right? Because like I lived with my mom, and it would always feel like a big gap distance.
Sure.
And so I was able to take that to the stage and kind of joke about how I felt like but using a metaphor, and it's not really a metaphor because it really did happen, but using those feelings and surrounding it in this whole story about how my sister is this really popular beauty blogger, right? And so her stalker one year decided to stalk everyone in my family, like my dad, my sister, my baby brother, and he didn't stalk me. and I was so upset because I was like, this is just another thing. Like, you know, on break, everyone, you know, like when I'm at my father's house this weekend, everyone's going to go get restraining orders, you know, and I'm being left out again, you know? And so I was able to, I think it's like that, where it's like you take those moments where it's like pain, but you know that there's something crazy about it, right? Like,
yeah, you laugh at yourself, you laugh at your situation. It helps you process in a sense, and deal with reality.
Yeah, that I was so pissed that the stalker was not stalking me because it was just like another thing that they could leave me out at, like talking about at the dinner table, right? It was like, oh, did you get this in the mail? And everyone's like, yeah, I got that. And then I would be like, well, I didn't get anything. Like, you know, and then be like, well, you know, you should count yourself lucky. And then, you know, it's just like all those things where it's like
what would you say is like your long-term or even shorter-term dreams, goals, plans for either stand-up or filmmaking? What is the ideal for your career in 5-10 years or sooner or whatever?
Well, one, I think I hopefully by the end of this year, if all goes well, I will start like just solely making money from like being funny, hopefully. Hopefully, like I've started a little bit, but hopefully like more. And also I'm hoping to build a very strong hour so that I can start doing colleges, because I would like to do NACA in 2021 and like start
What's
applying. That? NACA is the National Association of College something. But it's like basically if you want to do colleges, you have to go through them.
Gotcha.
So I would love to do that. I also would love to, maybe not anytime like in the next few weeks, but I would love maybe in like 2022 to start like do a cruise ship or something.
Yeah.
I also would love to sell a few scripts, and I think maybe in like 5 years, I would like to have like a production company that's got like multiple productions going on.
Do you think you're always going to be doing stand-up and always going to want to do stand-up? Is it something that you're going to take a break from and go back to? Is that something that you're going to retire from and transition into other areas of entertainment? Where do you think you'll be stand-up wise? Think you'll always do it?
Yeah, honestly, when I first ventured into stand-up, I didn't think like, oh, I'm gonna be like, this is just a means to get into something else. But then as I started doing it, I started falling in love with it, right? Like I started realizing like there is nothing better than like instant gratification.
Right.
Like, there's nothing better than hearing, like having a thought and the audience going with you. And also it's just like, it's also like something in improv that's always so electric is like that moment only exists in that moment. And like that's the same thing with stand up. Like that moment only exists in stand up.
Yeah, it seems like even like thinking about like Eddie Murphy, who I think is getting back into stand up, or he's writing now or something.
Yeah, he's supposedly getting back. Yeah, he made an announcement to come back tour.
Yeah, and the reason like I think these comedians like either stopped doing, obviously he's had quite a successful acting career, but I don't think they quit because they don't like it. It's because it's hard. No, you never hear a professional stand-up or someone who did it for a long time say, I don't like it. It's not that they don't like it. That's not the reason they quit. It's just because it's hard or you're doing something else.
I think it's because you have to – I think it's because I think a lot of people take breaks. Exactly what you said. It's hard. And it's like if you want to do it for the long haul, you have to realize – you have to realize also that there's going to be times when it's not going to be funny, when you're going to bomb. And like, that's painful, is like having people, I think Chris Rock one time said that like, he has to, you know, it's not like he has the luxury of like going out, right? Like if he goes out and he bombs, people are like, he's not funny anymore. Yeah. He's like all these things. So I think it's like, it's a big ego trip. Like it's a big, not ego trick, but it's like a big ego.
Yeah, I know.
What?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like when
It's an ego hit. Like, so it's like it's kind of like, whereas like
got to start from scratch.
Exactly. And like that's the hard thing is like, even like when I work on a new bit, it's like I try to work on new material. I try to work on new material at open mics like every couple of months, because the thing is, if you get too comfortable, then you don't want to be in that awkwardness of like, this joke isn't working and people are looking at me like I'm crazy, and like it's rough to stand in that. And so I think like that's the thing. Like Eddie Murphy said that, because like the good thing is when he got on SNL, he had all of this material, right? Because no one knew that he did stand up, and he was doing stand up. And so when they were like, hey, specials, he was like, I got you. Like, I've been working on all these specials. And then he just didn't. I think I've heard him say in the interview that he was just like, I just don't want to do the work because it would take a lot of time and work to get as good as how I was.
I was gonna say, I can't imagine. I can't even think of another profession that's like that, where like you finish a project or you finish a performance or something, and now you have to like start from complete scratch. It's not like an athlete. Like, okay, it's a new season. It's in a new baseball season, new football season. It's not like you forget your skills. It's not like you can't catch a football. It's not like you can't hit the baseball. Yeah, you have to brush up, but like stand-up comedy, you're really starting from scratch when you build new material or a new act.
There's a great documentary called Comedian with Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, and he talks about how it's like basically going into work like in your underwear. And then everyone being like, yeah, this is, like, you're not prepared at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And like watching him, you get like, wow, this is painful. Like, I feel like all the great, like, sometimes I'll write a bit and it'll just click. But a lot of times it's me constantly working on it. And like dying on stage to finally get it to like click, like one thing to work. Yeah. But I love it. There's nothing better than when you finally can like prove it and be like, see, I knew that this was funny.
This is not for me. I'm happy to be an audience member. That's where I belong. Yeah. For sure. Well, we covered a lot. Wow.
Sure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the time. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, follow you, or if there's anything else you want to discuss or bring up, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I guess people can follow me at Smile, Smile, Lexie, Lexie. I have an IE at the end of Lexie, and they can also find me at smilelexie.com. But yeah, I'm on every platform as Smile Lexie, even on TikTok.
Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Adam, for having me.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you on a stage again, hopefully soon. Hopefully things get back to normal soon.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see your short films. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
So there you have it, my conversation with Lexie Grace. Again, sorry for the echoey reverb on my end. I'm going to record my next episode in bed under the blankets, I think. For real, I thank Lexie for her time, and I had a lot of fun talking to her and hearing all about her life. I really enjoy talking to all my guests, and I'm truly fascinated by their lives and stories. Anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I hope to see other humans again soon. Thanks as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.